Ethan Carter wasn't just quiet, he was practically invisible. At Glenridge High, where social status was everything, Ethan's plain clothes and worn-out sneakers were a glaring anomaly in a sea of designer labels and trendy styles. While others strutted through the halls in flashy outfits, Ethan blended into the background, his head always down, avoiding eye contact. It wasn't that Ethan couldn't afford better clothes. He could, but he didn't see the point. His dad had taught him the value of humility, and that character, not appearance, was what truly mattered. Ethan admired that philosophy, even if it made him an easy target. Most mornings began the same way, whispers and giggles as he walked into class. The popular kids would smirk, trading exaggerated stories about how poor they thought he was. "Do you think his family even owns a car?" Someone would say, and laughter would erupt. Ethan ignored them, retreating to his seat near the back, where he could focus on his notebooks. Lunch was no better. The cafeteria was a battleground of cliques, each table a kingdom unto itself. Ethan always sat alone at the farthest corner, his tray of plain food untouched as he sketched in his notebook. Drawing was his escape, a way to drown out the noise. The worst part wasn't the direct bullying, it was the isolation. No one invited him to join their group, asked him to hang out after school, or even shared a kind word. To them, Ethan was a nobody. But what they didn't know was that Ethan's quiet demeanor hid a fierce determination. His evenings were spent working on projects for his advanced classes, sketching designs, and reading books about entrepreneurship and engineering. Ethan had dreams far bigger than Glenridge High. He didn't care about being popular. He cared about building a life that mattered. Yet there were moments when the loneliness crept in. Walking home alone, hearing the laughter of others echo behind him, Ethan sometimes wondered if he'd ever be more than the school outcast. Still, he carried on, telling himself that one day, things would change. For now, Ethan was just the invisible boy, mocked, underestimated, and completely misunderstood. At Glenridge High, the mornings started the same way for Ethan Carter, dread pooling in his stomach as he approached the front doors. He braced himself for what he knew was coming. "Hey, Ethan," a voice would call, and for a fleeting moment, he'd feel hope. Maybe today would be different. But it never was. Instead of a greeting, it was always followed by a cruel remark. "Nice shoes. Did you find those in the dumpster?" The jocks hanging out by their lockers roared with laughter, slapping each other on the back as if they'd just witnessed the world's greatest joke. Ethan didn't flinch. He had perfected the art of walking past them, his face a mask of indifference. But every word stung, even if he refused to show it. In class, the torment continued in subtler ways. The teachers rarely intervened when students whispered about him, assuming Ethan didn't hear. He did. Why does he always wear the same shirt? Does he even own more than two? I bet his family can't afford breakfast. Look how skinny he is. The words gnawed at him, but Ethan stayed focused on the board, jotting down notes with precision. If he let them see him falter, they'd only get worse. Lunch, however, was an entirely different battlefield. Ethan always picked the smallest portion available, not because he couldn't afford more, but because it made him less of a target. The popular kids at their table made a show of their extravagant meals, grilled chicken wraps, sushi platters, and sparkling water. "Hey, Ethan, want some of my scraps?" one of the cheerleaders sneered, holding up a half-eaten sandwich before tossing it into the trash. Another cheerleader giggled. "Don't be mean, Kelly. He probably eats better than that at the soup kitchen." Ethan clenched his fists under the table, keeping his head low as his ears burned. The pranks were the worst part. They were relentless, escalating each week. Someone once spilled milk on his notebook while pretending it was an accident. Another time, his locker was stuffed with crumpled paper and gum, forcing him to spend the better part of the afternoon cleaning it out. The most humiliating prank happened when they snatched his backpack, dumped its contents into the trash, and filmed the whole thing for social media. The video went viral within the school, with captions like, "Glenridge's brokest kid." Ethan watched the views climb, each like and comment a fresh stab of humiliation. But no matter how much they mocked him, Ethan never retaliated. He kept his head down, resolved to endure. Deep inside, he clung to the belief that this life was temporary. He didn't need their approval. He had something far more valuable: ambition. As he walked home that day, his sketchpad tucked under his arm, Ethan made himself a promise. One day, they'd regret how they treated him. One day, they'd see who he truly was. But for now, he'd endure their daily torment, quietly preparing for a day that would change everything. Ethan Carter's father was a mystery, not just to his classmates, but to most of the school staff as well. Unlike other parents, Mr. Carter had never attended parent-teacher conferences, school events, or even showed up to pick Ethan up after school. This absence only fueled the rumors about Ethan's supposed poverty. "His dad probably works at a gas station," one of the jocks once said with a smirk. "That's why he never shows up, too embarrassed to be seen." Ethan had heard it all before and said nothing. But the truth was far more complex. Mr. Carter was no ordinary father. He owned and managed a chain of luxury car dealerships across the state, dealing in brands like Lamborghini, Ferrari, and McLaren. His business ventures often took him overseas, where he negotiated high-stakes deals and attended exclusive automotive events. Despite his wealth, Carter had always believed in raising Ethan to be grounded and self-sufficient. "Money is a tool, not a measure of who you are," he often told Ethan during their late-night phone calls. "If people can't see your worth without it, they're not worth your time." Ethan admired his dad's values, even if they made his own life harder. Unlike other wealthy kids at Glenridge High, Ethan didn't flaunt designer clothes or the latest gadgets. His dad had insisted he learn the value of humility and hard work, which meant Ethan got a modest allowance and wore simple clothes. Their modest lifestyle wasn't because Mr. Carter couldn't afford more, but because he wanted Ethan to appreciate life without relying on material wealth. Ethan understood this, even if it meant enduring the relentless bullying at school. At home, Ethan's room was a testament to his interests. Stacks of engineering books, sketches of futuristic car designs, and a modest laptop his dad had gifted him for his 16th birthday. His dad wasn't around often, but when he was, he made sure their time together was meaningful. They'd spend hours discussing business strategies, car mechanics, and even personal goals. "Why don't you ever come to my school?" Ethan had asked one night during dinner. His dad smiled. "I will one day, when the time is right." Ethan didn't press further. He trusted his father's judgment, even if he didn't fully understand it. The day Ethan's classmates would learn the truth about his father seemed distant and almost impossible. For now, his dad remained a mystery, and Ethan carried on as the quiet, overlooked boy everyone assumed was poor. But deep down, Ethan knew his father's words were true. The time would come, and when it did, everything would change. It was a crisp Friday morning when the intercom crackled to life, silencing the chatter in the classrooms. Principal Thompson's boomed through the speakers, carrying a tone of excitement that immediately caught everyone's attention. "Good morning, Glenridge High. I'm thrilled to announce that next week we'll be hosting our annual Career Day. This is a fantastic opportunity for students to learn about various professions directly from our wonderful parents and guardians. Parents are encouraged to participate and share their career journeys. More details will be sent out today." The classroom buzzed with murmurs. "Career Day, huh? Guess we'll see whose parents actually do something cool," one of the jocks whispered to his friend, loud enough for Ethan to hear. "Yeah," the friend replied with a smirk. "Bet Ethan's dad won't show up. What's he gonna talk about? How to bag groceries?" Ethan kept his eyes on his notebook, pretending not to hear, but their laughter rang in his ears. He had no intention of explaining why his dad wasn't likely to show up. Throughout the day, conversations about Career Day dominated the halls. Students boasted about what their parents would present. "My dad's a surgeon," one girl said, flipping her hair. "He's going to bring in some medical models to show us how surgery works." "Well, my mom's a corporate lawyer," another student chimed in. "She's going to talk about how she's argued cases for major companies." Ethan avoided these conversations. He knew his dad was more than qualified to be part of Career Day, but he also knew it was unlikely he'd participate. Mr. Carter was due to return from a business trip that very day, and Ethan didn't want to ask him to change his plans. When Ethan got home, the Career Day flyer was already waiting on the kitchen counter. His mom, who worked part-time at a nonprofit, looked up from her laptop. "Did you hear about Career Day?" she asked. Ethan nodded, setting his backpack down. "Yeah, but I don't think Dad can make it. He's always so busy." His mom smiled knowingly. "You might be surprised. Why don't you give him a call and ask?" Ethan hesitated, but eventually picked up his phone. That evening, he called his dad, who was in Europe negotiating a deal. "Hey, Dad," Ethan began hesitantly. "We've got Career Day next week, but I know you're busy. When is it?" his dad interrupted. "Next Friday." There was a pause on the line. Then his dad replied, "I'll be back by then. Don't worry about it." Ethan blinked in surprise. "Really? You don't have to." "Nonsense," his dad said firmly. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Ethan hung up the phone, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. For years, he'd endured the rumors and mockery about his father. Next Friday, they'd finally learn the truth. As the week went on, Ethan kept his dad's promise to himself. He didn't mention it to anyone, even as students continued to speculate about who would make the biggest impression at Career Day. "Heard Justin's dad is bringing in an actual firefighter truck," someone said in passing. "Yeah, but Samantha's dad is a pilot. Can anyone beat that?" Ethan smiled faintly to himself, imagining the scene when his dad arrived. He didn't need to compete. His father's arrival would speak for itself. For now, he stayed quiet, letting the other kids talk. The big day was only a week away, but for Ethan, it couldn't come soon enough. The morning of Career Day arrived, and to Ethan, it felt like just another ordinary Friday. He walked into Glenridge High wearing his usual outfit, worn jeans, a plain navy t-shirt, and sneakers that had seen better days. His classmates barely noticed him as they buzzed with excitement, crowding the hallways to show off their parents and their presentations. In first period, students were already sharing stories. "Did you see Rachel's dad? He brought a mini heart surgery simulator. So cool." "And Kyle's mom gave out free cupcakes. She's a professional baker." Ethan quietly slid into his seat, doodling in his notebook as the conversation swirled around him. He didn't mind being overlooked. He'd grown used to it. Besides, he didn't want to draw attention to himself. Not yet. The first few periods passed slowly, with Career Day presentations sprinkled between regular lessons. Ethan watched as parents filed into classrooms, carrying props, tools, and gadgets to showcase their professions. Some even wore uniforms. A doctor in a crisp white coat, a firefighter in full gear, and a police officer with their badge proudly displayed. By lunchtime, Ethan was feeling a twinge of doubt. What if his dad didn't show up after all? He hadn't texted or called to confirm, and Ethan hadn't seen him in the building. "Ethan," a voice called from behind him as he sat at his usual table in the cafeteria. It was Nick, one of the jocks who loved to make his life miserable. "Where's your dad?" "Oh, wait, let me guess. Too busy flipping burgers to make it." The group at Nick's table burst into laughter, and Ethan clenched his jaw, refusing to look up. "Leave him alone, Nick," one of the girls said, though her voice lacked conviction. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. He'd endured worse. Let them laugh, he thought. Today wasn't about them. It was about proving to himself that he didn't need their approval. The afternoon dragged on, each tick of the clock making Ethan more anxious. Finally, during the last period, the announcement came over the intercom. "Attention, students and staff. We ask that everyone please clear the parking lot for a few minutes. We have a special vehicle arriving for career day. The words barely registered in Ethan's mind. He was too preoccupied, running through every possibility. Was it his dad? Could it really be him? Curiosity spread like wildfire through the school. Students pressed their faces to the windows, craning their necks to see what was happening. Ethan remained seated, unwilling to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing his excitement. The low growl of an engine reached his ears, followed by gasps and murmurs from outside. "No way," someone whispered. "Is that a Lamborghini?" Ethan finally looked up as a sleek black Lamborghini Aventador roared into the parking lot. Its glossy surface gleamed under the sunlight, and the sound of the engine sent chills through the air. The car pulled up right in front of the main entrance, coming to a smooth stop. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. Students abandoned their classrooms, pouring into the hallways to get a closer look. Phones were whipped out, the sound of cameras clicking and videos recording filling the air. Ethan stood slowly, his heart pounding as he made his way toward the door. His classmates stared at him, confusion and disbelief etched across their faces. As he stepped outside, the car door opened and out stepped Mr. Carter. He was dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his polished shoes glinting as he walked toward Ethan with a confident smile. Ethan stepped outside, his heart racing as he approached the sleek black Lamborghini. The door opened, and out stepped Mr. Carter, looking every bit the image of success in his tailored suit and polished shoes. "Ethan," his father called warmly, walking toward him with a confident stride. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder. "Is that his dad?" "No way. Ethan's dad drives that?" "Unbelievable." Mr. Carter extended his hand, giving Ethan a firm handshake that turned into a brief, proud pat on the shoulder. "How's it going, kiddo? Thought I'd make an entrance." Ethan smirked, his nerves easing slightly. "You definitely did." Turning toward the crowd, Mr. Carter addressed Principal Thompson, who had stepped outside, clearly as stunned as the students. "Where would you like me to set up for career day? I've brought some interesting things to share." The murmurs erupted into outright exclamations as Principal Thompson led Mr. Carter into the school. The students, stunned into silence, slowly began filing back inside, all while stealing glances at Ethan. As they made their way toward the auditorium, Ethan's dad turned to him and whispered with a grin, "I told you, Ethan. Sometimes it's all about timing." Ethan chuckled softly, suddenly feeling a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before. Today was going to be unforgettable. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and parents, all buzzing with excitement. Career Day had already seen its fair share of impressive presentations, a firefighter demonstrating life-saving techniques, a surgeon explaining advanced procedures, and even a tech executive showcasing the latest AI innovations. But none of those presentations held the same energy as the moment Mr. Carter stepped onto the stage. He began with a warm, approachable smile, speaking with confidence and ease. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Carter, and I manage a network of luxury car dealerships specializing in high-performance vehicles. Today, I'd like to talk to you not just about cars, but about the journey it takes to achieve your goals." Behind him, a screen lit up with a slideshow of exotic cars, sleek Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Aston Martins, all sold through his dealerships. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. As Mr. Carter continued, he shared his story of humble beginnings, working odd jobs in his youth before saving enough to start his first business. "I've always believed in hard work, integrity, and humility. Those values are what I've tried to instill in my son, Ethan." Ethan, sitting near the front row, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on him. For the first time, the whispers weren't mocking. Instead, they were filled with curiosity, and dare he think it, admiration. To make the presentation even more engaging, Mr. Carter had arranged for the Lamborghini parked outside to be brought into the discussion. A camera feed projected the vehicle onto the screen as he highlighted its features and engineering marvels. He finished with a piece of advice that resonated deeply. Remember, it doesn't matter where you start or what others think of you. What matters is your determination and the kind of person you choose to be. The room erupted into applause, louder than any other presentation of the day. Students who had previously ignored Ethan suddenly looked at him with awe, some even clapping harder as if to gain his attention. During the Q&A session, hands shot up across the room. What's the top speed of the Lamborghini Aventador? How did you start your first business? What's it like driving one of those cars? Through it all, Mr. Carter answered with poise, sprinkling in life lessons that subtly referenced Ethan's own journey of resilience and humility. When the session ended, a swarm of students approached Ethan and his dad. "Ethan, your dad is so cool. Why didn't you ever tell us your dad runs luxury dealerships? Can I come by and check out the cars sometime?" The same jocks who had bullied him now patted him on the back as if they'd always been his friends. The cheerleaders who had mocked him earlier giggled, trying to get his attention. One even hugged him, whispering, "I didn't know you were so interesting, Ethan." Ethan felt overwhelmed by the sudden shift in behavior. He glanced at his dad, who gave him a knowing smile, as if to say, "This is the moment I told you about." But Ethan wasn't ready to let the day end on false pretenses. He knew this newfound attention wasn't genuine, not yet. Still, as he looked out at the sea of faces, he realized that for the first time he wasn't invisible. And that, at least, was a start.